अपने शब्दों से, अपने विचारों से अभिप्रेरित करें और आप सबसे तालियां प्रार्थित हैं।
Member Niti Aayog, Dr. Saraswat, Principal Scientific Advisor Professor Sood, Secretary Biotechnology Dr. Gokhale, DG CSIR Dr. Kalai Selvi, Secretary DST Professor Abhay. I can see some of the eminent faculty members over here, former Secretary DST Professor Ashutosh Sharma, directors of different institutes, members of the scientific fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. I think at the outset I have to compliment each one of you and also myself for observing the National Science Day, which is a kind of a festival and a celebration for the entire scientific fraternity of the country, and also commemorates the miraculous discovery of the Raman effect by Nobel laureate Professor C.V. Raman almost 100 years ago. And at a time like this, when we are witnessing India in a state of a rising trajectory, I think it's also one of the better times, if not the best times, happening for the science and technology as far as India is concerned, also for the scientific community, because we have a leadership in place under Prime Minister Modi, which has provided us an enabling milieu. And therefore, there have been a series of successive strides, landmarks in different streams of science, which have given India a global recognition. We are, as was being mentioned also earlier, made a quantum leap as far as our startup movement is concerned. Again, it was Prime Minister who spoke from the ramparts of the Red Fort, and half of the population of India was not actually very clear about what it all meant. But today we see from 350 or 400, we've gone up to more than 1 lakh. And as was being mentioned by Professor Sood, we are, and also Dr. Saraswat, we are now more than 100 unicorns. We are rated number 3. I think that's what was left unsaid. And that's a miraculous rating. We are number 3 in the startup ecosystem in the world. So, and these are some of the parameters which are not manufactured by us, not designed by us. These are the global parameters. So now for the first time, I think the Indian scientific achievements have started receiving global recognition and have started also creating role models for the rest of the world to follow. In science, similarly, you saw in that brief picture visuals of the space missions. I know how far it sometimes doesn't occur to our mind that we launched our first space mission a few years after Americans had already landed a human being on the surface of the moon in 1969. That was Neil Armstrong. But today, we are there at the southern pole of the moon before everybody else. And the others are then looking forward to the cues from us. Similarly, we started off in a very primitive manner as far as the biotechnology was concerned. We were late actually, even the department was set up much later. But today, it is the same department which has given the world the first DNA vaccine. And therefore, from a country which was, a nation which was not known very seriously about healthcare strategies, is now being hailed as a preventive healthcare leader. Similarly, in the agriculture sector, the CSIR is there, the Aroma mission, the Purple Revolution. I think the very fact that it received a slot in the Republic Day parade at Kartavya Path is an evidence enough, and I don't have to add to that because it's now being. So we have actually from this department given this country a new option or a new avenue of agri-startups and a new genre. So a number of firsts have happened in the last few years in the space sector, in the medical and the biotechnology sector, in the agriculture sector or the CSIR. Also, from the, as far as biotechnology is concerned, we were just about $10 billion in 2014. In 10 years, we are 13 times higher. We are $130 billion. So these are some of the statistical evidences, because all of you would agree that we have been taught not to talk without evidence and not to talk without statistics. So the statistics bear out the measure of success that has happened in the last few years. Similarly, if we are looking for clean energy, it's we who are now setting the target of net zero for 2070. It's India who is giving the targets. And it's we who are also setting the target of having, because almost it's been estimated that more than 12% of the carbon dioxide emission happens from the road transport. So we have set for ourselves the target of achieving 30% electric vehicle market by 2030. And by 2030, we have also set for ourselves the goal of having totally electrically driven two-wheelers and three-wheelers. So we have now the confidence and the capacity to lay down these ambitious goals for ourselves, about which till a few years ago we were not thought about very seriously. And in the same vein as was also being underlined and being stressed upon by Dr. Kalai Selvi, the indigenous technologies, and most of them are actually indigenous. Our Chandrayaan mission, our Aditya mission, they're not only from nut bolt, but even the team is indigenous. And many of them, incidentally and happily so, headed by women scientists. So, and when we talk of the indigenous technology, I think it's an occasion for me. I was discussing with Dr. Rajesh. I said, might we use this opportunity to also share with this learned audience and also with the media friends that we have actually concluded the first ever human gene therapy trial in hemophilia. And hemophilia is, as you know, is one of the flagship programs in the health sector as far as the Government of India is concerned. As this program has been supported by the Department of Biotechnology, the Stem Cell Research Center in Bengaluru has conducted this human gene therapy trial in Christian Medical College, Vellore. We'll wait for the results and of course we'll carry on the series, but we have already made the initiation and hit upon the first destination. So we are now in a position where we are also offering leads and cues to others. The Department of Science and Technology, headed by Professor Abhay, is providing more than, through its incubators, providing thousands and thousands startups support and also job opportunities to more than 1 lakh or almost 1.5 lakh. So it's not only now confined to the research alone. We are hugely, hugely contributing to the economy of this country. So gone are the days when the science labs were considered only to be, some dingy elements. The other day, I only suggested, and I think we'll follow it up in a larger way in the other institutes also. I said we should have more and more of interactive programs with the stakeholders. For example, the CSIR dealing with the plant and the aromas could have more and more farmers program. And incidentally, when I was there in one of the farmers program, one of the farmers said that we passed by this institute for years and years. We didn't know what was happening inside. कुछ लोग कहते थे कि यहाँ पर कोई मेंढकों को मारा जाता है, कोई कहते थे रात को भूत नाचते हैं क्योंकि ये पता नहीं डेड एनिमल्स को करते हैं, और कोई कहता था ये भी कि अस्पताल है कुछ शायद जानवरों का. I said, thank God they didn't say that कि इलाज करने वाले भी जानवर हैं. So all kinds of stories happening. The same is happening in Nagpur also. The other day, hardly anybody has peeped into these institutes. So now we have started reaching out. I think that's very important. I was telling Rajesh, if we don't reach out, it's not only for our publicity, it's also for the good of others. So many myths are created because we don't reach. So myths not only in the society, but also myths about the kind of work that we are doing. Now I was telling him only this morning, I said, you come out with papillovirus vaccine, this is much talked about. But talked about as what? As a cure for cervical cancer, which to be scientifically very specific is not true. It's only half the truth. It's only it's working against a virus which has been known to be one of the contributors, if at all, sometimes, may or may not. So if we don't, and when the marketing sector takes over, it creates those kind of hypes which may sometimes be a little out of place. So we have to reach out so that we have the stakeholders making benefit of it. Also, they get the optimum information. Because English language has some beautiful words. So optimum means neither more nor less. So if you give more, that's also difficult, as you are giving in the case of Pablo Arias. If you give less, then the version is ke andar bhoot naachte hain. So in order to optimize our work and to provide it to the society, because ultimately it is for the ease of living for the society. And as was being being said by Professor Sood, we are now into very ambitious plans which will have a global implication. We are into National Research Foundation, the Anusandhan, which I personally believe, I hope I prove to be right, is going to be a better version of the National Research Society. Dr. Akhilesh is there, who's put in his heart and almost soul into it. Because if the soul goes out, it's difficult to survive, but he has actually done that. So we have tried to make a very comprehensive, with the representation not only of the science, research and industry, but also including the social sciences, social humanities, in order to give it a larger Indian context and to combine it with the traditional medicine also. Because it is this government in the last 10 years, the Prime Minister himself, at whose behest the world started observing International Yoga Day, and then the world also observed the International Day of Millets. Similarly, we are into quantum technology, one of the very few nations, being mentioned by Professor Sood, is something which is going to be an important component of our scientific experiments in the days to come. And that has also proved that we do not adopt what has already happened outside. We are now also almost at the same pace. Like we adopted television almost 20 years later. It happened there in 1950s. We started with a Kisan program and a Chitrahar somewhere in 1970. The computer also happened like that. It was no longer so. So we are at the same pace, and in certain ways we are also ahead of others. And similarly also the artificial intelligence. In fact, in this country, sometimes I was telling them, there is not only that we are at same pace as others, we are sometimes overdoing also with artificial intelligence by creating all these fake pictures or whatever, deep fake. So we are now also looking for how to optimize the use of artificial intelligence through intervention of human intelligence. So we've gone that far now. So and I think that has also received recognition by the world across. That is the reason when Prime Minister was there in DC, in Washington, DC, it was the Americans who solicited that they wanted to have one of our astronauts to accompany them to the International Service Station. And of the 4 who have been selected yesterday, the Group Captain Nair, Group Captain Pratap, Group Captain Krishnan, and also Wing Commander Shukla, one of them might also be offered as to join that venture. I mean, the decision will be taken later on. So, but we are now in that position where we can actually collaborate at an equal platform. And since this is a ceremonial program, I don't wish to go on and on, but I think to conclude, I was just thinking when I was sitting on the stage, because I keep reading all these biographies, one of the very notable comments made by C.V. Raman, when possibly it was not received in the same spirit, was that if India has to progress, it has to be through science and still more science. And suddenly it struck me, because that was the first sentence the Prime Minister spoke in this video, कि भारत की प्रगति के लिए विज्ञान. So now we are in an era where the Raman effect has started showing its effect under Prime Minister Modi. Thank you.
माननीय मंत्री जी, वैज्ञानिक चेतना से लैस आपके संबोधन के लिए हम आपका आभार व्यक्त करना चाहते हैं और इस कार्यक्रम के सफल निष्पादन के लिए अब मैं धन्यवाद ज्ञापन हेतु आमंत्रित करता हूं हेड NCSTC डॉक्टर रश्मि शर्मा जी को. डॉक्टर रश्मि शर्मा जी, आप कृपया आएं और